Hey everybody, I'm here with my friend Robert Cheeke. I don't know if he realized what a huge impact he had on me, and I wanted everybody to hear his story. I went vegan 4.5 years ago, 100% vegan, that is, because of Robert and his book Shredded. I wish I brought a copy with me, but I'm sure you can still find it online. He had a major influence on my life. He's been vegan since 1995, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and he has an amazing story, and I'd like everybody to hear it. So to start with, I wanted to talk about back in 1995. What was the reason you first went vegan?
Yeah, thanks, Richard, and thanks for your kind words and for having me on. And I this wasn't even planned to prop, but I have Shredded here. It
Oh,
was holding
nice.
my laptop up, but my laptop was a little too tall, so I pulled one book off, and it happened to be Shredded. I still have all these other books from other authors holding my computer up. Uh, Richard, 1995. So I grew up on a farm out in Western Oregon, and I come from a farming background. My parents both farmers. They both worked in the animal science department at Oregon State University and raised us on a farm. And so we had farm animals, basically every animal you can think of except for pigs. We didn't have pigs, but cows and horses and goats and chickens and geese and turkeys and rabbits and all of that. Maybe some sheep. I don't think we did. Maybe sheep and pigs were the only ones we didn't have, but we had a lot of animals around. And my older sister became vegetarian at a pretty young age. I think probably around age 8 or 9 or 10. And later she became vegan in the early 90s. And I didn't really have any idea of what that was or have any interest in it whatsoever. But she was organizing an animal rights week at our high school. And so I decided, I was a sophomore, I was 15 years old. She was a senior. I decided, out of respect for my older sister, I'm going to be vegan for a week. And so I attended very much like we do now when we're out on tour and doing our thing. I attended lectures and presentations about animal rights. I watched videos about factory farming and animal testing. I had conversations with people. I read literature, which in those days, believe it or not, was like oftentimes black and white
Yeah,
pamphlets,
yeah,
some in color, but this is the early mid 90s. Like, internet wasn't quite really up
right,
and running in most households. And, I decided that I would be vegan at that time. And I wasn't sure how long it would last. I was a 5-sport athlete in high school. I was always athletic.
right,
And I was only 120 pounds. I was a pretty small guy. I weighed 120 pounds, wanting to get bigger and stronger and wondering if a vegan diet and lifestyle could do that for me. And so the only thing I had to do was put it to the test. And
right.
sure enough, over time, in fact, in the first maybe 7 years, I gained 75 pounds and became
Incredible.
a bodybuilder.
Yeah,
By age 21, 22, I was bodybuilding and competing by age 23 and up to 195 pounds. And then I just kept going. And right now, as I'm talking to you, just last night, I stepped on the scale 220.2 pounds. So exactly
incredible.
100 pounds heavier than when I started. And just to finish that kind of original story, that was my goal, Richard. My goal, I got into animal rights. Like, I was really into it. I just didn't want to harm animals anymore. I grew up with them. I raised them. I would bottle feed baby calves before I got on the school bus. I would show chickens and rabbits and guinea pigs and dairy calves at the county fair. And, I really liked animals. And I
Right,
thought, man, if I could just show people that you can be an athlete as a vegan, because, I didn't know anybody. Like, at that point, without the internet and books and that weren't in existence, I didn't know anybody in the world that was doing it. I
right,
eventually learned about Brendan Brazier and others, but I just figured this is going to be my journey, and I'm going to show people, just even my high school classmates. I'm going to show my soccer teammates, my basketball teammates, my cross country and track and field teammates that I could build muscle on a plant-based diet. And so that's what I did, and that's really how it got started. And that's what compels me now, 26 years later, to still work hard for animal rights,
for
to
sure.
still make a difference. My birthday was last week. I turned 41, and I visited a farm animal sanctuary as a way to, not to celebrate me and my birthday, but that's what I wanted to do with my time, was to
Right,
go spend time with farm animals. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
right. Which leads to my next question. Did you get a lot of opposition at first when you did it?
Yeah, at first I did, because you got to remember, and I don't want to harp on this too much, but it was the time. It was the mid 90s, and I was in an agriculture community, big 4-H, big Future Farmers of America, FFA, farms around. I lived right next to a dairy. There was another dairy about a mile away. Our neighbors had, another small farm. We had our 20-acre small farm plus some other farmland in the next town over. And, initially I got, if you want to call it pushback or concern from my parents, first and foremost, because again, my dad's an animal scientist. He writes textbooks about raising animals for food. He's a world expert in that, spent decades traveling around the world, teaching different societies and cultures how to raise animals, particularly rabbits was his area of specialty. And so they were concerned out of my health. Like they were worried that I wouldn't get enough nutrition with plants only, without animal protein.
Yeah.
So that was number one, which is ironic. 25 years later, most people now say the complete opposite. Like, I know I should go plant-based for my health, right? But a quarter century ago, it was the opposite. It was like, you are not going to be well. You're going to be malnourished, skinny. You might even die or pick up some sort of disease or illness. You need animal protein to survive. That was the mindset, at least where I grew up during that time.
Yeah.
And also my teammates, some of my teammates were concerned. And I was like the full-on vegan guy. I wasn't wearing leather shoes, even though everybody else was with their soccer shoes. I didn't want to use the leather equipment in PE classes. And I even got our high school, our whole high school, physical education department to order rubber and synthetic basketballs, footballs, soccer balls, things like that. Which was, because I was passionate about it, and people knew me as like this outspoken vegan guy. I would give presentations in school about those topics, and even got into some debates in class, and even got kicked out of class one time because of that kind of passion that follows this lifestyle. So initially there was opposition.
Yeah. And
then, like anything, Richard, as soon as you achieve some sort of success in whatever it is that you're doing, I mean, it could be business, education, fitness, health, well-being, wealth, whatever the case is, people start to pay attention a little bit. Yeah. So the fact that I was a decent athlete, I was a decent athlete on some varsity sports in high school, and then I ran cross country collegiately 1 year at Oregon State University. I was a pretty good athlete. People saw that, wow, okay, now he's like 2, 3, 4 years into this thing. Maybe there's something to it. And then a few friends did what a lot of people do. They adopted a plant-based or vegan or vegetarian diet, or largely vegetarian diet, just out of support, because they're like, man, this is my friend. He's like dedicating his life to this thing. He clearly cares about it, because he's just, he wears that on his sleeve. He's promoting it. He's attending, protests, or he's giving presentations at school. He's encouraging people to, live with compassion. And some of them joined as well. And so I had a few high school classmates who were vegan, and then even into my 20s, met a few others. And then the rise of the internet, like I'm gonna throw it way back here and say something like MySpace. Yeah. MySpace was a great way to connect with other vegans around the world, and I used that platform for that years before Facebook came around. So so that's that created an environment where there was less opposition and more community.
Right. Did you have problems finding out what foods to eat? Because now there's veganized everything, but back then there wasn't any products.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's kind of a fun one to answer for people who are newer to the vegan lifestyle. And I'm not saying that as like I'm special because I've been doing it for a long time. It's just historical context. Yeah. Historical context. I just have that. I just happen to have that personal experience where, yes, there was like, so first of all, I didn't know exactly what to eat. Yeah. Right. I just knew what I even really followed it like a set of rules at first. And actually probably for many years without even making my own decisions. It was more like, I can't have this, rather than I choose not to, if that makes sense. Yeah. I would follow like a set of rules. Like I was a teenager, I could say to my sister, hey, can I have this? Because it has, this ingredient. Is this ingredient okay? Is refined sugar okay? Because for 20 years, I didn't have anything with refined sugar in it, even like a bagel. If it had refined sugar, didn't touch it, a soda, whatever. like that was like a non-vegan thing for decades because of the way they made sugar using
Right.
animal bones in the
Exactly.
refining process.
Yeah.
And so, some things have changed since then. But Richard, I actually, that was the challenge. I didn't know exactly what to eat,
I'm sure it was.
and
Yeah.
so it was a lot of things like bagels and chips and salsa and pasta and and bread rolls, and it wasn't always the healthiest thing, to be
Because
honest.
you had nobody
But
to consult with, right? You didn't have a doctor to consult with or anything
right,
back then.
right. Just other vegans, and of course, if you're a teenager, you like, you typically like junk food type of
Yeah.
stuff. And so that's kind of what it was like. I ate, tofu everything. There was tofu and packaged. Eve's Veggie
Right.
Cuisine was and Tofurkey were kind of the only brands back then. There, no Gardein, no Beyond Meat, none of that
Right.
stuff.
Right.
But there were a couple brands of tofu, so I ate a lot of that. And then just the kind of it's almost humorous if it wasn't kind of sad that there was, when it comes to things like vegan ice cream, there was just like soy and rice were really the only ones, and they weren't always that good. And the non-dairy beverages, there was soy and rice, and that was it.
Right.
And they were kind of expensive and little tiny packages, little those fold up cartons. You couldn't find them in the big 32 ounce or quarter gallon, whatever they come in now, or bigger. You just couldn't find them, and it was expensive, and you had to go to co-op grocery stores, member-owned cooperative natural food stores. Like it was, but that's the thing, Richard. I would get so excited. I first moved away from home at age 19. So 4 years into my vegan lifestyle, I went to the Utah College of Massage Therapy to become a sports massage therapist. And there I was, a vegan, kid in Salt Lake City, right downtown. And there was, a store called Wild Oats, which eventually, Whole Foods bought them many years ago. But Wild Oats was a natural grocery store.
Right.
And it was just fun to discover that. Like you almost had to like plan around, like, can I find a natural store, or there's like a Kroger store that has a natural food section in it. That's what it was like back then. And then just the social aspect was a bit challenging because in any given circumstance, 90 to 100% of your friends were not vegan. So, you had to deal with that kind of thing.
Right. My next question is, did it take you a long time to transition? Because you were doing it as a challenge like I was. And so you were doing like a week-long challenge. So my guess is you probably did it just cold turkey. Or was that the case when you first did it?
Exactly. December 8th, 1995. That was it.
Yeah, you remember the exact day too. So do I.
Yeah, and I have it written down. I don't have it. It's like on these little videotapes, because I was using a camcorder back then. In 95, I was filming the Animal Rights Week, doing interviews. And it's funny to go back. I have like this high-pitched, teenage voice. And it's written on there, December 8th, 95. Like I know, like I just know that. I know that date, even though it's a long time ago. And so I will say, yes, I did it immediately. And without exception, and with all kinds of enthusiasm and passion. And it was like a switch. It was just turning this, it was like immediate disdain or disgust in animal food products, even though literally the day before I was eating chicken sandwiches or eating food from McDonald's, which was a place I used to go to for lunch in high school, or this sandwich shop and get these like ham and pastrami and, whatever. It wasn't Subway, but it was a locally owned sandwich shop. And I literally went there with my friends every day. Ironically, this is a long time ago, 25 years ago. Those are still two of my closest friends today. In fact, one has a birthday. I was texting him right before this call today with you. But I was that's the kind of stuff I was eating. And so I'm not going to say I didn't have any cravings. I really enjoyed the taste of chicken. And so I was tempted a number of times, and tempted by cheese, and, which is a very addictive substance.
Very addictive, yeah.
Yeah. So I was tempted by those things, but I never forgot why I became vegan. And that always stuck with me. And there were times, I'll be honest with you, Richard, I got to be honest. There were times I didn't feel that great in those first 2 weeks. And that makes sense. I was eating like bread rolls and chips and natural soda. And I was just eliminating everything and just including a few things, and still being an athlete. I was like, almost like lightheaded one day, and people were like, man, maybe you should stop this thing. And then I just realized, like, I just got to eat more real food,
Exactly.
And that was only, that period of not feeling super well was a week or two, or something like that. It was the very early days, and it didn't sustain itself. It was a short period.
Right.
And maybe that's true for many people in some sort of transition where you dramatically change your diet. I don't know, because that's the biggest change I've ever made in diet, and it was a long time ago.
Yeah,
But there
for me,
wasn't a
it was,
transition.
I didn't have any withdrawal symptoms because I was already, 70 to 80% plant based when I did the challenge. So I didn't have to experience what you did. So it was a much more gradual thing before I cut off those animal products completely.
Well, and I want to say something about that, Richard. There's statistics. I don't know who's done the studies or anything, but I know the stats are out there that most people tend to stick with a plant-based diet for the long haul if they do it in gradual steps.
Right.
That's just the I think it's a human experience. It's human behavior. Yeah. That if you cut something off immediately, it could be a drug, it could be addictive substance, it could be a behavior that's been built into your life for decades. When you cut that off immediately, there's strong withdrawal, there's cravings, there's emotional, feelings of missing an experience, or even missing a feeling, a physiological feeling, or some sort of dopamine hit, or whatever it is that you get from it. But studies tend to suggest that those who adopt a plant-based diet more gradually stick with it for the long haul. Now, a lot of people like me, like animal rights vegans, don't want to hear that, right? Because animals are suffering right now, today, whatever. But we also have to think and realize, wait a minute, if someone is more likely to stick with it for the rest of their life or for many, many years, then we need to be open to those gradual steps. Right. Because if we're gonna say, you go vegan right now, you go vegan today for the rest of your life, and that person sticks with it for 2 months and then goes back to eating animals, that doesn't help animals for the next 30, 40, 50 years.
Exactly.
But if you come to it from a adaptation period where you adapt to the new foods around you, adapt to your new lifestyle, and make it sustainable, and put longevity behind it, and do it for decades, that helps a lot more animals in the long run.
Oh, for sure. I think ethics come with time when they're doing this, because immediately when I started in 2016, I got the ethical side of veganism. I never wanted to be a part of that culture anymore.
Yeah,
I think it just switches off once you completely cut off the products.
I think so too, and I've seen that. Even in very prominent vegans, I probably don't need to mention them by name, but you know of them for sure. Yeah. People who came to this lifestyle more from the health perspective, maybe it's a medical perspective or health perspective, but years into that lifestyle became much more compassionate toward animals. Yeah. Over time, because naturally they just looked at them differently. They weren't a food source anymore. They weren't a commodity anymore. They weren't there for exploitation, entertainment anymore. Right. These are prominent people in the vegan movement that are now much more compassionate, because they just allowed that time, like you said, to kick in, where it's like you just start viewing the world around you, but differently.
Exactly. So I want to talk about your transition to bodybuilding, because I think you said it took you 7 years to get to where you're really starting to gain weight and gain muscle.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I did gain muscle a lot faster. It was just, 28 of those pounds was in a 10-month period, when I really got into hardcore bodybuilding. But just the accumulated period was, from 120 pounds to 195 was about 7 or 8 years or so. But what happened was, I was a small guy. I even have other kind of crazy statistics that are much more staggering than 120 pounds at age 15. In 8th grade, I was 89.25 pounds. I still have that. I still have my little medical chart that they check you for lice, and they those kind of things. They check you for lice. They put your height, your weight, your vision, all this kind of stuff. And I still have it because I saved all that stuff as a kid. And I was 89.25 pounds at the start of 8th grade, which I guess I would have been 13 and turning 14 or something like that. Yeah. And so, I was never I was just never very muscular guy. So bodybuilding was the farthest thing from my reality. I just wanted to kind of make that point. It was just,
Right.
Even when I was a runner at 19, 20 years old, collegiate runner, weighing 145, 150 pounds, which I guess is pretty standard for me being 6 feet tall. It's a, you know, kind of an average running weight. Some runners are much lighter, of course, 135. They tend to be maybe a little bit smaller, like 5'8", 5'9". But here I was, 6 feet tall, 150 pounds, 155 pounds, 5 years into veganism. And then I just got interested in lifting weights. It was just one of those things where, you know, I wanted to get bigger and stronger. I used to want to be a pro wrestler, and I just liked it. Even though I was a runner and soccer player and all that, I liked, there was something about lifting weights I enjoyed. And then I met my friend Jordan, who I was just texting. Today's his birthday. I've known him since preschool. And I met up with him after high school, just randomly in a grocery store. You know, he had gone off to college. I had gone off to massage therapy school. We were back for the holidays, I think, you know, Christmas time with our families as 19-year-olds, and bumped into each other at a grocery store in our hometown. And we just got to talking, and he was into this sport of bodybuilding, which I had honestly never really heard of. In fact, Richard, I was grossed out by the muscle magazines I would see in Safeway and the grocery stores with just the veins all over the covers. Like I couldn't look at those. And that's exactly what Jordan showed me. He showed me these muscle magazines, but now that I was a little bit into lifting weights, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see it. And so we started training together, and, you know, we've been like, you know, best buddies ever since. And, you know, like I said, still in touch and on a daily basis, and, you know, great friends. But he really introduced me to the sport of bodybuilding. So then we started training together, and sure enough, within a short amount of time, I went from skinny runner guy to pressing, you know, 100-pound dumbbells in each hand. And that was just a result of day in and day out. I mean, I was training 6 days a week, and I was starting to learn more about how to plan meals, and I was eating like 6 times a day, you know, 3 bigger meals, 3 smaller meals. I was using some sports supplements back then, mostly protein powders, and just using that as kind of like basically like a weight gainer kind of thing for me because of my body type at the time. And so that's how it really got started. And then I eventually started competing in bodybuilding, like on stage, and that lasted for almost 10 years. And then since I got such an early start at it, you know, 21 years old or so, I was retired, you know, by age 29. Like at age 29, I was like, I'm done with competing. I had competed a bunch of times over the course of the years and finished first place multiple times, second place a bunch of times, everywhere from first place to last place. But I even got to compete at the Natural Bodybuilding World Championships in 2006 within the INBA, and that was really exciting. And I competed in 5 U.S. states: Oregon, Washington, California, Arizona. I feel like I'm missing one somewhere. Texas, I guess. I think that's 5. I didn't count, but yeah. So I competed in, I don't know, 5 or 6 states, and I was kind of done. And that's when I pursued, and I'm sure it's a future question you've got for me, but that's when I started pursuing writing, which is something that I also wanted to do. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer. You know, like my father, who wrote a bunch of books, and so I started writing and wrote my first book. At least I published my first book in 2010. I wrote books before that never got published.
Right. Did you save them, by the way, or?
Yeah. And what's funny is they were like motivational books.
What's that?
Yeah. They were like motivational books, like self-help, you know, motivational books. Because I was so into that, because I felt like, honestly, that was the reason that I found any kind of success in bodybuilding, because I had no business being there. I was a skinny runner kid, and I was vegan on top of that. And here I was winning bodybuilding competitions and filming my own documentary in 2005 called Vegan Fitness Built Naturally, and speaking on stage with, you know, sharing the same stage as like Dr. T. Colin Campbell and all these people, even way back then, 15 years ago, and Dr. Michael Greger, and going way back, you know, I knew these guys a long time ago, and I was speaking around the world, and, you know, and that's what or at least around the US and Canada at that point, and later around the world. And that's what I was writing about. I was writing about the principles, the maximizing the 1,440 minutes you have every day, and setting goals, and finding your passion and making it happen, and collaborating with other people, and networking, and doing what you love to do. You know, it was all this kind of rah stuff.
Right.
And I love that book. I even had an agent and shipped it around, or shopped it around to publishers, but nobody knew who I was in that motivational circuit. And I was like in Hawaii up on stage with David Wolf and these people who were big names back then, like really big names.
Yeah.
Because David Wolf was sharing the stage with Tony Robbins, and I was sharing the stage with David Wolf, and I was on these like all expenses paid trips to be a speaker out in places like Hawaii. It was really exciting. And I thought I had some good ideas to share with people, because that is what catapulted my career, which was an aim at promoting veganism and animal rights on a larger scale.
Right.
But nobody knew me in that realm. And this is a funny story, and I haven't shared it very often.
Yeah.
But I was actually in California with Brendan Brazier in 2008. He and I, way back then, were actually going to be roommates in Los Angeles until like 2006, but I just couldn't afford to do it at the time. And so he had moved there, and I was visiting.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2008. And I was at his house or apartment, whatever it was. And on that day, I had received my very last rejection letter for my book, and it was from his publisher. And I remember telling him that. And Brendan's a quiet guy, soft-spoken guy. I'd known him since 2005 at that point, for 3 or 4 years. And he just kind of like, he swiveled his chair, he kind of turned his chair around and faced me. And he's like, Robert, nobody knows you as the motivational guy. You need to write a book about vegan bodybuilding. And I said, I've tried, but I want to write about the other stuff. I want to write about the motivational stuff that helped my vegan bodybuilding. And he said, that's just not how it works. Like, people know you as a vegan bodybuilder. That's what you need to write about. And so that's what I did. Yeah. So Brendan, gets a lot of credit for that I sat down and I had a great final year of competing in bodybuilding. I really was in my best shape. I won a competition in 2009. I placed third in another one that was really competitive. And it was just a great year for me. And I just stopped and I wrote the book. And then I toured around and got to, give talks like at the Whole Foods Market World headquarters way back in 2010 that Rip Esselstyn set up for me and all of that. But it started from getting rejected from a motivational book that I had written, which I still have. Yeah. It's even printed. I have it printed. It's on like one of those, it might be on like a floppy disk. Maybe it wasn't quite that old. Right. It could be on a floppy disk. I know some of my other books, I wrote other previous books that were on like floppy disks. But this one might actually be in a Word file, but I have no idea. That would be like 5 computers ago. Yeah. So luckily I have it printed and maybe saved in an old email. Mm-hmm. So I might be able to resurface it. But that's one of my goals, because those same ideas have helped me now write 5 books and now travel to Australia and Asia and Europe and Caribbean and Canada and do what I do. And hopefully and gain 100 pounds and promote veganism the way that I wanted to 25 years ago. I still think those ideas are good about making the most of the time that we have, being optimistic, being able to connect the dots ahead of time, being enthusiastic, caring for others, helping others, not expecting things in return, but just doing good deeds for others. Things I admire about you, by the way, too, as one of my all-time biggest supporters of vegan bodybuilding. I appreciate you so much, and even the shirt I'm wearing that you sent me. I mean, these things matter. These things matter to me, and so I would like to eventually revisit that book.
Right. I wanted to talk about a little bit about injury, because as athletes we've all had them, and I know you had a back injury. Was that when you were competing?
Yeah, man, it's even a kind of a tough thing to talk about, Richard, because I actually hurt my back as a high school athlete, age 16 years old. So I was only a year or two into my vegan lifestyle, and I was a great, competitive athlete, and especially in track and field. And I hurt my back one Saturday afternoon, and so I was training on my own, not with the team. Right. But I was a little guy, but I was so into the shot put, we spin and throw the shot. And I was doing long jump too, where you kind of arch your back and land in the sand. So I imagine it probably had to do with the shot put. You're carrying a heavy ball. I think in high school it's 12 pounds, either 12 or 16. Yeah. The shot that you're twisting, like that's how you throw it. You twist. Right. So I ended up just like twisting my spine and herniating discs in my back. And it may have even been exacerbated by long jump. I don't know when I heard it on that afternoon, but I actually had to go to the clinic, not the hospital, but like I guess, I mean, it's just the clinic where they do make a diagnosis, and then I got assigned physical therapy. So here I was, like this 16-year-old doing like, physical therapy, where it's a lot of, typically older people at the clinic doing, rehab stuff. And here I was, a teenager in my prime, doing rehab stuff. And like, I don't even remember the things back then, but like the little, the things they put on your back, the little electromagnetic stimulation and all that stuff. And I had to do exercises because my spine was damaged. And so, I got over that. I had to miss 1 or 2 seasons. Every season is like every 3 months. I had to miss the winter season, so no basketball or wrestling, and then track and field the next season. In the spring, I may have had to miss 1 year or 2. And then by the next year, fall, I was back to playing soccer and all that. But that thing would haunt me to this day. Yeah. To this day, like I struggle to put my socks on this morning because I recently, I don't know how I did it, re-aggravated my back just a week ago. But it's an ongoing thing now for 25 years. And so it had an impact my entire life, is what I'm saying. So even when I got into bodybuilding, I was so into it, right? So I was doing squats and all of that. Right. And one day, 21 years old, Phoenix, Arizona, which is where I was living, I was doing squats and I couldn't get the weight back up, and I collapsed, like just sandwiched all the way to the ground. And I had trouble walking for weeks. Even trouble using my limbs, my upper, to grab the phone or get dressed. I had a bunch of nerve damage in my spine, and that was tough. But I kept going. I recovered and I kept exercising. And then, 23 years old, Corvallis, Oregon, back in my old hometown, and training there. I was pretty strong at this point. I was easily pressing 100-pound dumbbells, and I got into deadlifting, which I'd never really done because, again, my back was a little bit vulnerable and susceptible to things. And I remember it wasn't even that heavy looking back. I mean, I see it, you look at like Instagram videos, everyone's lifting more than me, but I think it was like 337 pounds. And I was doing it for 5 reps, and on reps between 4 and 5, I got stuck, like where I was kind of bent over and I couldn't quite get it. So I jerked back and my back just went, basically you could hear it and feel it just snap. And I was done. I had, I could barely even use my upper body, like for a period of time. And so I started to resent it a little bit. And then this would continue on. And I did things like, chiropractic care, and I would take breaks, and I would get kind of assessments, what's going on with my back. And it would continue on. I mean, in Portland, something happened. And I couldn't even walk to my car in the parking lot. I couldn't get my feet to move. Like my brain said, walk to the car. My feet wouldn't move. And then it happened in Texas, where I thought, man, I'm finally overcoming this. I'm like, I was in my 30s, 32 years old. I was retired from competitive bodybuilding, and my back was a big part of that, when I needed to step away from the sport. Right. And I was training out in Texas with some guys I still keep in touch with today. And same thing, something happened with deadlifts. And on that particular time, it was the worst of all time. I actually couldn't stand up for 5 days. So I didn't eat, drink, because I couldn't get to the bathroom. I couldn't lie down. I couldn't get into bed. I had to stay on the couch because I couldn't get out of it. And I remember, it's kind of weird. It's just because you think of it's like out of a movie or something, but I would try to pull myself up on the kitchen counter and then just collapse to the ground. Oh my God. And I was like, how is this happening? Because I see, NFL players who go through these broken backs, and like, why won't my spine respond? Especially after lifelong athletic career, and even finding success despite these injuries. I still won bodybuilding competitions. I still won running races. I still was a good athlete. And it's carried on. And I've done more massages than I could ever count. And of course, I was a sports massage therapist myself. Worked with lots of different chiropractors. I've done different, x-rays or MRIs or assessments. And it's just these herniated discs in my L5, S1 area that gets so inflamed that the pain like is so much that I can't do things. Like even, I remember even in a crosswalk one time, like, with a car coming, just trying to get out of the way. And I just couldn't get, I had my little dog with me too. And I just couldn't get myself going. I had to just like, wait, hopefully the car's going to stop kind of thing. Like my spine just won't respond. And so that's something that, it just stays with me. And even my parents say, like, man, Robert, now you're in your 40s, you should probably stop this weightlifting stuff, because that tends to be what sets it off. Even though that's not maybe the original culprit. The original is an old injury that never, despite diet and all kinds of different things, diet, supplements, rest, recovery, taking 5 months off at a time from all exercise. It just, for whatever reason, for me, it's just part of me. And so, I still wonder to this day how long I can keep doing this, because I'm actually afraid of like a back surgery. I don't want to do that.
Oh, I don't blame you. Yeah.
And I've done a lot of other things. I've done laser therapy for my back. I've done numerous different sports chiropractors who even work with like professional sports teams, like here in the Denver area, who work with the professional Denver sports teams, and nothing seems to be like a great solution yet. So I take it easy. I haven't done deadlifts in years. I haven't done squats in years. Like I just can't do that stuff. And so, and I still maintain this, 220 pound build by basically sitting on machines and like doing presses and
that's what
and all that.
about next, actually, because that'd be very inspirational to some people out there. So you believe in machines as well, that you can get equally big with just machines.
I had to believe in them. I didn't want to. In fact, my first book, all I talked about was free weights, because in a perfect world, free weights are best, right? In a perfect world, free weights help you build the most muscle because of all the balancing they do and the recruitment of other muscle fibers and just everything involved in the range of motion of using free weights. They're totally ideal for people who don't have ongoing bone or nerve or tendon issues. Right. And so I didn't really speak highly of machines and cables for a while, and I also come from a bodybuilding background and not quite old school. I wasn't doing this during Arnold's era, of course. I'm not that old school, but I was still a little bit old school in bodybuilding, late 90s, early 2000s. It's still a little bit old school, like Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman era. And so I kind of frowned upon it. I thought people were being a little bit lazy, by doing machines. Like, come on, free weights is where it's at. And I eventually had to just learn that if I can just exert myself with the same amount of effort and tension and commitment and focus, I can get a good return on investment from machines. And so that's what I did. In fact, when I first moved here, again, like right in the heart of the pandemic in March of last year, we moved here to Colorado. I didn't join a gym, of course. Gyms weren't even open and the whole world was shutting down and a lot of uncertainty about the future. And so I had some dumbbells at home, but I didn't really use them. I was working on my new book and so I just didn't do much. So I really got a 3 or 4 month break. And then I did join a gym at the very end of June. Colorado was doing pretty well with handling this situation, much like Oregon and a few other states who were just doing a really good job with it. And we still had and have to this day we do temperature checks when we get in. We wear masks at all time. Everyone carries a spray bottle and towel around. Every other machine is blocked off, so you have to avoid being 6 feet from somebody else. To this day, I was there last night for 2 hours. Same thing. Everyone,
same thing.
Mask. Yeah. So, but my point is, I joined in June. Okay, the end of June. I did not touch a dumbbell or barbell until January. It took me 6 months before I would touch a free weight. And part of that was the tedious effort of having to spray down each individual
Yeah.
the barbell or dumbbell, when really I would just sit in a machine for 20 minutes and do my, curls and extensions and rows and presses. So that was part of it. But also I was worried for my back because I had some issues last year with my back too. Little things like sprinting in the yard. I mean, in the park with our dog, I pulled something and there I was out again. And then I was hosting that holistic holiday at home event, the virtual vegan cruise. And I was like this, I was, kind of flexing, when I was on camera, just because that's just what I obnoxiously do. And I had a tank top on. So I was like, flexing. And then I went immediately from contracting my muscles for like 20 minutes straight to jumping jacks. And again, I slipped like a disc in my back and I was out again. And so I basically had to learn that machines are okay. And then it's not just this circuit that older people do. And that's what I was doing here. And I'm in decent shape right now, carrying a little more body fat, maybe than I would like. But I mean, I post regular photos all the time, every week on Instagram and stuff. And I'm getting in pretty good shape. And here I am using machines only because that's what worked for me. And then I did recently get into the free weights again in January. And I've been doing those off and on ever since.
Do you alternate between the machines and the free weights?
Yeah. I started doing, well, it really just started out of like, I was doing Danny and Giacomo's Vegan Proteins 28-day overhaul program. My wife was doing it, and then I wanted to support Danny and Giacomo by doing their program too. And it called for free weights. So I started doing these free weight exercises. And I'll tell you, it's kind of funny how that happens because I hadn't done like dumbbell chest press in a long time. Right. Even though last year I was doing it back in Arizona. And so I started with like 50-pound dumbbells my first week. The next week I was up to 75-pound dumbbells, pressing. Right. And the next week I was up to 95-pound dumbbells. And then the next week I told Danny and Giacomo, I said, I'm going to go to 105. And then I sent them a video of me doing 110-pound dumbbells in each hand. Wow. And then I've done 105 in each hand ever since, because 110 was pretty heavy. I didn't have a spotter and I was just doing it by myself.
Right.
I got like 2 reps, it's kind of dangerous. So now granted, I could have done heavier during when I did 50s. It wasn't like that was like max effort. I'm just saying over time, I allowed myself to progress, where now every single time I go, I can press, 105-pound dumbbells with no spotter and just flip them up and just go. And then I do machines as well. I warm up with machines. That's how I work it. I warm up with machines to just get range of motion and flexibility and all that. And then I go into some free weight exercises, as long as they don't require like bending over too much.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So I'm not doing like bent over rows or anything, but I can do T-bar rows where I rest my chest on a pad, where I'm not, because my spine will just fall over if I don't. Right. And so that's what I do. I do some machines, and then I work into some free weights, and then often back to machines to cool down. And then lately I've been doing the Stairmaster like crazy. I mean,
that's a great machine.
I climbed 106 flights of stairs yesterday. The most I've done in one day recently, I climbed 180 flights of stairs. It took me 40 minutes of continuous climbing, and including like sprinting the final few minutes. But I average about 100 flights of stairs every time I do it. And I do that every other day. I try not to ever go 2 days without climbing stairs. And that's only since, late January.
Aside from the treadmill, I think the stair stepper, I get the most sweat.
Yeah.
Greatest workout from that.
I have to, well, I mean, I train in, like what you're wearing. I've never once in a whole year trained in anything but long pants, hooded sweatshirt, and beanie hat. I never have a t-shirt or tank top ever when I train, and a mask. And sometimes, because it's here kind of cold in Colorado, sometimes I'll even wear 2 t-shirts and even 2 hoodies. So I have 4 layers on. Right. And so when I get on the Stairmaster with 2, 3, 4 layers, I'm just dripping sweat. I have to have a towel, and then it fills my glasses, and I have to have a towel, and then I have a beanie hat that I have to I don't have to wring it out or anything, but I have to turn it around so the sweat moves. And then I get home and my hat's all turned inside out, and my wife says, "You look like Elmer Fudd." but my head is like too wet to be comfortable. Yeah, Stairmaster, I've written about it in a lot of my books too. It's like, that's like the ticket to burning fat and fitness for me. I mean, you're working so hard. Like, I'm just gasping for air when I'm done. And not because I have a mask on. It's hard work. I mean, climbing 100 or more flights of stairs is hard work.
Yeah, of course.
Especially over 200 pounds body weight, or well over 200 pounds, and in multiple layers of shirts and hoodies and hats. I burn, and all the while, not only am I burning fat, sweating like crazy, but I'm also training my calves, my hamstrings, my quads, my glutes, and even my core.
Right.
Like, my legs, I don't know if you've seen my photos recently, like, my legs are they're just getting kind of ridiculous. I can barely fit them in. They're just growing. Like, I can barely fit them in pants anymore. And when I don't even have to even try to flex them, and they just have all the lines in them. And it's, a lot of that has to do with when you climb 100 flights of stairs every day. That's what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
We did for months on end.
Yeah, you used to eat a lot of calories. Do you ever count the calories to make?
Yeah. I'm still around 3,000 calories a day consuming, and I expend 3,000 calories a day. So it's really almost irrelevant. I could say the same if I consume 2,500 and expend 2,500. It just so happens that I tend to expend about 3,000. So for me to maintain weight, I need to eat about 3,000. Yeah. And yes, I have been writing some recent articles for veganbodybuilding.com. We're kind of trying to relaunch the website with a new look and new feel with my new book that's coming out in a few months. So I've been documenting it. And one day I noticed I only had 2,500 calories, but it was also a day I noticed I was quite hungry. And I was also going out of my way to like eat as cleanly as possible because I knew I had to record it. So if normally I would have like a frozen burrito or something, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do it today because I don't want to have to write about it and like tell everybody about it. And so it's just a level of accountability, and also like fear of judgment and fear of like, embarrassment or whatever that. And so as a result of all this worry and anxiety of what are people going to think of my real daily diet, I actually end up under eating that day because I was eating like, oh, I better go slice up some apples, or I better have some oranges. That looks better. And of course, bananas are part of my life every day, but I was doing like these kind of things. Like, oh, make sure I have the salad today because I don't have one every day, but I want to make sure I do today. And all of a sudden, here I was like 600 calories shorter than my regular intake because I was, playing psychological tricks with myself. So, it go and then guess what happens, Richard? And this kind of stuff because of human behavior. And I'm not saying this is a negative thing necessarily, right? But after I'm trying to be like good boy Robert Cheeke with my diet, and sometimes I am. Like when I wrote Shred It, I was so good. And now, I'm training so much, 2 hours a day, that I have a little more flexibility. I can have other things. So one thing that was a byproduct of this, so I was eating like fruit, salads, and then like literally the next day or 2 days later, I ate 3 pizzas in like 36 hours. Yeah. I mean, they're I don't know how big, but they're ones I made at home. They're homemade ones. Yeah. I got the crust from Trader Joe's. They have this frozen pizza crust. It's like, I don't know, it's like this big. Not sure what that is, 8-inch diameter or something. Yeah. But I ate 3 freaking pizzas in a day and a half. Right. Because I think I had to make up for it because I was still training 2 hours a day, but I'm like, man, I'm so hungry, hungry. And so there's this balance there of like making, and it wasn't that I had to eat pizza. I could have easily had lentils and rice and beans. Right. I just was craving pizza. And I made sure the pizza had like artichoke hearts and spinach and different colored bell peppers and mushrooms and black olives and like, and minimal vegan cheese and, to keep the oil and calories down. So it wasn't like it was that bad. I even posted photos online. It was great. But my point is that sometimes when we're trying too hard to be too perfect, the next day or 2 days later, 3 days later, we're like almost like trying to make up for lost calories. And we then we start, then there's like if there's a tub of vegan ice cream in your fridge, if there's, my wife made like 2 boxes of vegan macaroni and cheese, and I ate the whole thing. But also, I'm also like, you know, and it's probably hard to tell on camera, but I'm, you know, I'm 220 pounds is a lot different than 180, which is what I spent most of my life being.
Right.
You know, yeah, I competed for 10 years at 176 pounds. Like, this is pretty new to me. I've been over 200 pounds for about 5 years, probably 5 or 6 years. I've been 200, but
Yeah.
I was mostly like 202, 203, 204. Now I'm consistently
Yeah.
217, 221.
Right.
There's a difference there.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I need more calories.
Right.
So yeah, I do document it, and I'm going to write more articles about that soon, so people can see like behind the scenes and what I'm really eating. And I'm happy to share it. And I even tell you exactly, like, yeah, I ate a bunch of pizza, or I ate, you know, I had a popsicle, or had vegan ice cream, or whatever. But you
Right.
can also see all the other stuff that's like fruit all day long, and you know, and nuts, and you know, leafy greens and other healthy foods too.
One more question before we move on about food. I'm just curious, what kind of foods that you eat right after a workout? You know, do you focus
Yeah,
on protein or?
that's a great question, Richard. And you know what? And I think you know this about me. After workout, you know, I'm not big on. I don't emphasize protein. I haven't really focused on protein in almost a decade. Ever since Dr. T. Colin Campbell's plant-based nutrition course at Cornell I took in 2012, I haven't used any protein supplement since. And so for me, it's mostly dinner after workout. I tend to work out in the evenings, and
Yeah.
then I have, so whatever that is. It could be a noodle dish. It could be salad. It could be plant-based burgers. It could be, you know, a vegan pizza, vegan sushi, that kind of stuff. So I actually eat just dinner after workout. If I happen to work out earlier in the day, you know, something like soup, sandwich, wrap, you know, just something heavy, you know, calorie-wise, but no emphasis on protein at
I'm
all.
glad you said that because I'm the same way. You know, I just make sure to eat something afterwards. You know,
Yeah, something that's just
yeah,
filling, that, you know, tastes good, feels good. You know, nothing wrong with you know, eating vegetables, rice, beans, hummus, you know, lentils, potatoes, fantastic, yams. I mean, there's so many, you know, oats. That's all perfectly fine after workout, and still helps with great recovery and helps build muscle.
exactly. I wanted to talk about your upcoming book. So I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
it. I
yeah,
actually ordered a copy. It won't come until June, but I want everybody
right.
to know about it. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I know we're short on time here, so I'll just be really quick that the new book is called The Plant-Based Athlete. I co-authored it with Matt Frazier from No Meat Athlete. Dr. Michael Greger from nutritionfacts.org and How Not to Die wrote the foreword. And it is a fantastic project. It's the biggest book I've ever written. We interviewed 60 elite, world-class, Olympic plant-based athletes, many names that you know, like the Rich Rolls of the world, Scott Jurek, James Wilkes from the Game Changers, Megan Duhamel, Olympic gold medalist, Dotsie Bausch, Olympic silver medalist, you know, Vanessa Espinoza, all kinds of great athletes. Andreas Wojta, Austrian Olympic runner. I mean, everyone from Natalie Matthews to Harriet Davis to Fiona Oakes, who owns 4 Guinness World Records in endurance running, the legends of the vegan athlete world, Brendan Brazier, Rip Esselstyn, all these great people. You'll
Nice.
recognize a lot of names, and you'll discover names you never heard of. People who are actually Olympic champions you probably never heard of. I mean, a lot of people have never heard of David Verberg, right? David Verberg is Olympic gold medalist, vegan guy. I've met him in person. He's on the U.S. Olympic 4x100 sprinting team, has a gold medal in that. A great guy. A lot of people don't know who he is, and that's what we're excited to share in this book. You're going to discover people you've never heard of, and yet they're some of the greatest plant-based athletes in the world. And it's also a how-to book. It's designed to be super mainstream. It's hardcover copy. Tens of thousands of copies are being printed in the first print run. We're with HarperCollins, the world's second largest publisher. It'll be in every bookstore in America on June 15th, and even stores like Walmart and Target and Costco and all the usuals, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Amazon.
Yeah, I'm
It's
really
just,
proud of your journey because that must be an awesome feeling to happen to all these places now, and you know, it's a great accomplishment.
it is. Thank you. And it's a longer conversation. I'd love to come back and talk more about it sometime. But like, for people who know my journey, you heard a little bit about it. I was rejected by every publisher. That led me to, you know, feeling pretty sad about that. I went on my first book tour on my own, couldn't afford much. I had to sleep in my car in a lot of places, from the desert in Arizona to the mountains in Pennsylvania and New York, where I'd wake up with, like, you know, runny nose from being in the cold, or a pile of my own sweat in the desert, or you know, being having to have my windows cracked open in Wisconsin and being, eaten by mosquitoes during the night because I had to sleep outside some sort of warehouse. Like I just worked really hard. Like I've self-published all my books and sold 60,000 copies of them. And that helped get this book deal a full decade later, which now will have my book in every bookstore in America and in other countries around the world. We're currently working on a book deal in Germany. It'll be in Canada, and then very likely in the UK, Italy, Czech Republic, down the road. So it's been one heck of a journey. And to be able to do this project with a longtime friend, Matt Frazier, and a longtime role model, Dr. Greger, to write the foreword, and then to get endorsements from heroes of mine. We have quotes on the back cover from Dr. T. Colin Campbell, and endorsements from Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn and Brenda Davis and John Robbins, who's just on Mount Rushmore of veganism, who wrote Diet for New America, who inspired me when I first started 25 years ago. And now we're in email contact on a daily, almost daily basis. And we arm wrestled each other 15 years ago in person. We were arm wrestling, and and this book is it's going to help people. Richard, the recipes in this book come from the athletes. The day in the life meal plans come from the athletes. You hear directly from some of the stars of Game Changers, some of the legends of the vegan movement, the men and women who have been driving this movement forward for decades, including some like Orla Walsh, maybe people have never heard of, and she's a massive star as a incredible track cyclist and national record holder in Ireland. So there's so many great athletes and stories to share, as well as meal plans, recipes, and the whole plant-based nutrition 101, talking about protein, fats, carbohydrates, nutrient density, Dr. Furman stuff, with the Andy score, and lots of scientific studies throughout the book. It's 350 pages, hardcover, in stores June 15th. And as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about it.
Definitely. I want all my listeners out there to check it out. It's going to be well worth it.
Thank you.
Okay. I wish I had time for more questions. Maybe we can do this again sometimes. I still have a lot.
Yeah, I think probably my long answers early on, maybe cut the number of questions short. But storytelling is a big part of what I do, and it's a big part of how I got here. Whether it's bodybuilding or overcoming injury or becoming a writer that I dreamed of when I was 8 years old. And it took 33 years to get to the point where now I'm at the level of where I wanted to be, getting my books in stores. That took 3 decades. And I like to share some of the reasons and stories behind how that happened.
For sure. Okay. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. And yeah, let's do it again sometime. I know we're short on time. I want to thank you for everything you do to support me and vegan bodybuilding and Vegan Strong. I see you wearing the hoodie, and thanks for having me on today.
Places, when I shop at groceries too. I'm always wearing your vegan gear.
Well, we appreciate that, and like I said, I love the shirt that you gave me. I wear it to the gym. It fits really nicely, and I thank you for that. Let's do it. Let's touch base in May or June, right before the book comes out, and we'll talk about updates between now and then.